What's going on, everybody? Welcome back out to the Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. Justin and I have a banger for you today. We have maybe the most highly anticipated Cleveland Browns season in the past 2, 3, 4 decades, however you want to describe it. For those of you who are returning, we appreciate you coming back to the channel. I'm Jeff. I'm here with my co-host Justin. For those of you who are new, I'm Jeff. This is my co-host Justin, and we're not even going to do any introductions. No, how are you doing? This side of the end, whatever. We're going to get right into it. Today, we are bringing you our 17 game. Yes, you heard that correctly. Added game, one less preseason game, 17 regular season games. Our 17 game record season in-depth prediction guide for our Cleveland Browns. If you're not a Browns fan, if you're from another team, we'll talk about your team if you're on the schedule this year for our Brownies. But we're getting into a week 1, 6 days away on Sunday. We're doing this recording on Monday, September 6th. So the first weekend of the year. Not a primetime game, Justin. I don't know how it's not a primetime game, but The Browns play the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead. Do you want to start us off? We're going to go score prediction, record prediction, thoughts on the matchup, keys, and players to the game. Take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys remember back in one of our older videos, we showed a little bit of a preview for this. And so obviously Jeff and I have the score predictions here. Starting off, I got the Chiefs 34, Browns 31, and a very tightly contested loss for us. 0-1 prediction for the beginning of the season. Unfortunately, us Browns not too great in week 1, hoping that turns around. But as it stands right now, it is what it is. So for me, I got our thoughts on the matchup. The Browns start the season with revenge on their minds. However, the Chiefs also come into this game on a mission to show they are better than their woe of the Super Bowl loss from last year. Both teams will get highly motivated to make a statement about their respective seasons going forward in this game. And obviously, it's two of the best teams in the AFC. So, this could be a preview of the AFC Championship game to come later this year. But with that being said, I've got 3 keys to the game. Jeff and I actually took a different route to this. He's going to have a player to watch. I have 3 keys to the game. With that being said, a little kind of description of that. I have the Browns have a tall order on their hands in hopes of breaking their week 1 curse against the high-powered Chiefs offense. The new look Browns defense will be tested with getting Patrick Mahomes and company off the field as much as possible. Key number 1, Miles and Clowney assert dominance against new KCO line. Now, saying that it's a new KCO line isn't, a diss to them, because obviously they went and got Pro Bowl tackle from the Ravens, which obviously is a big get for them. They traded a first-round pick for that. Don't know why the Ravens would, help the team that's going to be their, AFC Championship get, but it is what it is. The second key I have is get off the field on third downs, something that the Browns were just awful at last year. And to be honest, it's probably not going to start very well this season going up against Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce. But if we're going to win this game, that's what needs to happen on defense. And then for us on offense, I think it just comes down to doing what the Browns do best, run the ball and control the time of possession.
All sounds like good thoughts, but before we get into what I'm going to say, this is going to be a long one. It's probably going to be the Cleveland Pulse podcast, episode 52, but it's not just going to be audio. We're going to have stuff on the screen. We're going to have screenshots on the screen. We're going to have the Google Doc linked below. We're going to tweet it out. Follow us on Twitter. I'll throw the Twitter right here. We're going to do a lot of stuff that's visual as well. So you can put it on, you can listen to it with your headphones, but it's going to be a good watch. It's going to be long. It might be 2 parts, but Justin, I do agree with you. I do think that our Brownies lose this week 1 matchup. I think that you see this a lot with teams that lose the Super Bowl, especially how badly the Chiefs lost the Super Bowl last year. I think they come out. I think they're probably the most motivated team in the NFL. I know that the Browns are up there. The Browns are up there as far as roster comparison, at least on paper. We'll see in between the lines. I think that Andy Reid being at Arrowhead with the offseason, I think that that's a huge bump to them. No hate to Kevin Stefanski, but I think this is one of the rare matchups where we do not have the coaching edge all season long. Outside of a couple other games, my key player to watch here is Baker Mayfield. I think that he is the difference of this game. I think if you see Baker Mayfield outperform Patrick Mahomes, I think we have a great chance to win this game. However, I think Patrick Mahomes probably ends up with a better stat line than Baker in this game. That's why I'm giving the slight edge to the Chiefs. Do I think that this game could come down to one or two plays? Absolutely. I don't think it's going to be a total blowout. And I think there might be an opportunity for the Browns to win this game in the fourth quarter where we just don't happen to convert. We just miss on our opportunity. But nice scheduling from the NFL. We get a tough one in Arrowhead off the start, but then they give us a complete snoozer week 2, a nice home opener, hopefully against the Houston Texans. Is Houston the worst team in the league?
It's them or the Lions. Just
both on our schedule.
Yep. So we'll definitely get a chance to see. I think the Texans are just in a, they could be in a better spot if they, didn't have to deal with the whole Deshaun Watson issue. But as of right now, they are, and so he's the third on the depth chart, and I'm sure that's why we both have this as we have it.
Right, I see it. I'm looking at it right now. I see us for. I don't know if this is your biggest blood of the season. It's a lot. It's 20. I think we have 20+ point victories, both of us, for the Cleveland Browns. I like your keys to the game here. Do you want to go in on those?
Yeah, and I'll try not to do verbatim of everything that I have listed down here, but the keys for this game, obviously, it's just it's going to be a blowout by Jeff and I's standards. So, we want to see the receivers get going early. You kind of want to see Baker build that kind of relationship with OBJ, Donovan Peoples-Jones. We already know that he's got it with Jarvis, maybe even get Anthony Schwartz involved a little bit, but obviously, we want to see these guys get off to a hot start after coming out of the game with Kansas City. Second key, don't be afraid to take shots early and often. I mean, again, you get Odell Beckham Jr. back. You get Donovan Peoples Jr., who, we've heard great things all preseason. We've seen great things all preseason from him. Take some shots with those two. I mean, those two are both absolute burners. OBJ looks fast in his recovery. So I'm looking forward to seeing this one just for the sake of having guys kind of pop off a little bit. And then third, this is probably the most important piece, is build confidence defensively, try different rotations and sets. We have a lot of guys that we brought in this offseason, be it the draft, be it the free agency. We have a lot of interchangeable pieces. And obviously you get Greedy Williams back, you get Grant Delpit back, mix that with John Johnson, Ronnie Harrison, Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward, Troy Hill. There's just a lot of guys in that back four that, can be playing, but, there's only 4 of those positions. So just try a couple different rotations. Let Joe Woods kind of, get into the rhythm of what he can do with this defense.
This is a great week 2 matchup. I think that where maybe we could complain about some of the NFL scheduling decisions made specifically with our schedule, which we will talk about later down in this video, later down the road. But I think that a lot of people can agree that hopefully this is a nice confidence boost or a continuation of confidence, however week 1 turns out. If we get blown out week 1, this will be a nice bounce back game. If it's a close game, we'll get the taste out of our mouth, hopefully very quickly. If we win, we'll be able to continue it with a completely, different roster, the Houston Texans, than the Kansas City Chiefs. And we get to play a nice, hopefully simple and routine game at home in front of our fans for the first week of the year. We both
the stadium's going to be rocking for a game that's probably going to be a blowout, to be honest.
Yes, I think we can agree that hopefully the stats will be padded in this game, especially the second half. And that's a good point. We get our defense integrated, which I didn't even think about. Hopefully we get some of our younger offensive pieces, Anthony Schwartz, Demetric Felton involved. My key player to watch here is Kareem Hunt, just because hopefully Nick Chubb will be on the sidelines for the second half of this game, at least hopefully the whole fourth quarter. I think Kareem Hunt picks up a lot of the workload, probably has more carries in this game, hopefully, than Nick Chubb, and he pops off. If you're a fantasy football player, look to play Kareem Hunt week 2, is my opinion. Which we might be coming with fantasy football videos. We might be coming with Browns fantasy football later in the week. Drop a sub, drop a like, drop comments down below. If you think that we're going to get blown out by the Houston Texans and you're a Texans fan, let us know. Seems unlikely though. Week 3. Week 3. I'm gonna start off here. Justin, is Andy Dalton? I'm starting with a question. Is Andy Dalton the starter when we play the Bears week 3?
I don't know who their week 2 matchup is, but I know who their week 1 matchup is, and I know that's a good reason for why they're not starting Justin Fields. Seeing that we're on the schedule and knowing our talent, I would. And knowing that you have Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, maybe you keep Andy Dalton in for 3 weeks and let him take the beating that is the defensive lines that he'll have to go up against. So I'm going to say, yeah, Andy Dalton starting, to the dismay of a lot of Ohio State fans, such as myself, being a Buckeye and everything, wanting to see Justin Fields. But we do have another video coming out later that I have some opinions about that we'll get into. But for now, Andy Dalton's the starter here. And with that being said, the Browns get the win 27-17, moving their record to 2-1, almost said 21. But the three keys to this game for me, Chubb and Hunt. I mean, the Bears have a talented front seven. And if you want to get those guys to kind of lack off of Baker Mayfield in the passing game, you got to let Chubb and Hunt do their thing. Getting 30 plus touches is a big key here. Comboing that with Baker's play action success, another big key. And then just winning the turnover battle. Obviously, we've seen Baker take a jump in his efficiency and not turning the ball over as much. And let's be honest, we all know who Andy Dalton is. We saw Andy Dalton for, a good decade here in the AFC. So I know we can win the turnover battle and force Andy into a couple bad decisions.
So we're both 2-1 here. We haven't disagreed yet. I think that this game is super underrated on the schedule. I think that this could be one of the more interesting games as far as storylines go throughout the whole season. I hope Justin Fields is the starter. I think that would be an unbelievable matchup. Yeah. And I think this is interesting. And this is why me and you agreed to do this, is because your keys to the game is to establish the run game early due to how good their upfront defense is. My key player to watch here is OBJ because of how good their run defense could be. I think that if you could get Baker and OBJ established on the right foot in this game, I think it's going to be tough for them to stack the box. And I think that that's going to give you the most dynamic play calling ability from Kevin Stefanski. I think OBJ has a huge game here. From what I remember, I do not believe that their corners are very good. No. Their cornerbacks are bad. According to PFF, their average cornerback grade is 50. That's not very good. And their safeties are 65. Tashawn Gibson's one of their starting safeties. He's actually decent, but their cornerbacks are not very good. Jalen Johnson, Duke Shelley, Desmond Trufant, not a lot of big names there. So I think you got OBJ, big stat line, and the Brownies move to 2-1. So like I said, we haven't disagreed.
No, and just to go back to your point, obviously, I very much like us doing the key player and 3 keys to the game, having a little bit of a difference in opinion. Going back just really quickly, that Bears front seven is mainly a pass rushing group. That's kind of why I had it as, establish the run. But I love that, we have different takes because of similar, things that we picked up from scouting out the other opponents. So I do like that a lot. But like you said, we're both 2-1 right now, going on to Minnesota. We're going to travel to Minnesota against the Vikings, a team that, poses a threat offensively, not as much as the Kansas City Chiefs, but something that we'll face for the first time is a running back that's top 5, I think. Dalvin Cook, Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson, and Adam Thielen. That's a hell of a squad offensively. And so I think the 3 keys to this game is to, blitz the run lanes early, fill the gaps in the run defense. And then we get into a little bit of let Joe Woods implement DB heavy defense with early lead, obviously allowing for Baker to sling it early and kind of get into that lead that you had. Very similar to a game last year with the Titans, where we kind of took Derrick Henry out of the game early, which was, very beneficial. However, our defense last year, not great in preventing comebacks. Hopefully that'll be a big turnaround this year and something that we, get to see Joe Woods implement.
I think that the Vikings fans, they have some merit to be decently excited about this season. I believe both of us did this prediction before the maybe you did it after, but I'm sure you didn't take it into huge account, but they are losing Irv Smith for the year, I think.
Yeah.
So it's not a huge hit to their offense, but their offense will not be at full staff. I think that in comparison, we would have to deal with, Travis Kelce obviously will be a big test week 1 compared to not having to guard, a premier tight end for, this game in Minnesota. But this has been a competent organization, the Vikings, for a decent amount of time. Kevin Stefanski comes over to the Browns from there. Yes. They're not a bad team. They're not a bad organization. I think that they're underrated at home. I think their fans are going to be rocking. You have this as a 6-point game. I have this as a 3-point game, but we both have the Brownies getting the job done. Key player to watch, similar again, Jadeveon Clowney. I think this is what we signed Jadeveon Clowney for, shutting Dalvin Cook down, a top 3, top 4 back in the NFL, depending on who you ask. I think Jadeveon Clowney has a huge game, racks up nice tackles. And if Dalvin Cook is contained, I don't see how we lose this game. If he runs wild for, 100 yards, which I thought our run defense was good last year for at some points of the year, I think it's going to be hopefully better this year. We got some question marks on the interior defensive line, but Jadeveon Clowney has a huge game, and we're going to be like, wow, thank God we paid Jadeveon Clowney for scenarios like this. And both of us have the Browns 3-1 through week 4.
Yeah, and just, I know I'm not doing key players to watch, but I'd keep an eye on Anthony Walker and some of our linebackers who will, be looking to kind of improve their tackling and their wrapping on a top 3, top 5 running back in Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have to tackle good. We're definitely going to have to get off of the field on 3rd down. I know that that's a big staple for the whole season for the defense to improve. But with that being said, we disagree. Week 5, it only took us 5 weeks to disagree. That's pretty good, though.
Yeah, I think for us especially.
I know. I think that's pretty good. I think that there's some merit where maybe you could say that we win the game in Kansas City, but I think the safe play is saying we lose. So I'm going to start here because 3-2. We just beat Minnesota on the road in my prediction. We're going to have to go all the way out to Los Angeles, something that I've talked about, something that we talked about with Mike Keeley. We don't play very good on the West Coast. Back-to-back games on the road is not going to be easy. And for how good that this team has been talked about, the Browns, in this offseason, being 3-2 through week 5, there might be some uproar. People might be freaking out. I think it's plausible. I think it might be justified depending on how the losses have, how they came to be. If they were big losses, if they were close games, I don't think it's an issue. And even if there are blowouts, I don't think it's an issue. I think 3-2 through the first 5 weeks of the schedule is not something to be worried about. I think that this Chargers team is really good. I think that they made smart moves in the offseason. I think if you rival them with the Cincinnati Bengals, I think Cincinnati could have been a lot better if they would have done smarter things in the offseason. I know you agree with that. I think that the Chargers were, on that Bengals level of being, they could have took a bigger jump, and then they take this big jump this offseason. You have concerns about Justin Herbert going into his 2nd season. Sophomore years really aren't normally great for quarterbacks, but I think that Justin Herbert outplays Baker Mayfield this game, or it's close enough for the Chargers to get the job done. And we just don't travel well out to Los Angeles. My key player to watch is Austin Hooper, believe it or not, which is weird because it's a tight end. But the Chargers linebackers are not very good. Easily the worst part of their team. And I think that Stefanski scouts this, realizes this. I think you see Hooper, Njoku, and Harrison Bryant involved from the get-go.
Yeah, and this is a game, obviously, you have it chalked up as a loss. I have this as the closest game this season. True. And I kind of pin it down, and I know I've done this with a couple games already, and I'll continue to do so. I'm comparing the games to last season's. So this one reminds me of the Cincinnati Bengals game, the second one that we had, where Baker essentially just kind of goes throw for throw with Joe Burrow. We see him put on one of his best games after throwing an interception that gets Odell to get on the injury list and go out for the season. But I think this is a very highly contested game for, a lot of good reasons. Jeff obviously making the point that we don't really travel too well out to the West Coast, but also because Justin Herbert has shown a lot of promise. And I think that offense is, only gotten better. Austin Eckler, a great 3-down running back, some quality wide receivers out there. We'll see how their defense does. Obviously, you get Joey Bosa back and you get Derwin James, but overall, I don't think defensively they are a great team. I think it's going to be more of an offensive battle. So we're going to have to, for the keys to the game, we're going to have a couple of things happen. First, we're going to have to win the turnover game. I know everyone likes to talk about the turnover game, but in close contested ones, you really need to get the ball over at least 1 to 2 times if you're going to pull out a close win like this. The second key is take advantage of the Chargers lacking linebacker room. Jeff already talked about it, getting the tight ends involved early, splitting our running backs out. We love to split Kareem Hunt out wide. And then, like I said, we've got players on defense. They've got players on defense. You got to see Miles and Denzel have more of an impact than the Chargers, Joey Bosa and Derwin James.
I think that I think our defense is, which I know one of the bigger concerns is that our defense has a lot of new players, which is very valid. And that's something that you could say. And I do not think that we are going to be playing at the top of our ceiling week 5. I think that that's a pretty good argument to make. I think the defense plays just good enough for us to win the Vikings game. And then you see the defense maybe take a small step backwards in this game. I like all your keys to the game, though. And I don't think this is a bad game to disagree on. So me being 3-2 for the Browns week 5 and you being 4-1, which is pretty on par for us headed into week 6. I think our schedule is pretty balanced. It's pretty even. I mean, we get 2 games on the road and then we get to come home and play Arizona. So I see we have similar score. We both have us winning, though. Tell me why do the Browns win this game, in your opinion?
Let me tell you really quickly. This was probably the one game on the schedule that I had us swinging and actually taking a loss here. I think the Arizona Cardinals are a super underrated team. I think because of the division they play in, they are considered to be the 3rd or 4th best team, when I think it's very likely. You saw 3 teams from the AFC North last year make it into the playoffs. I think they're one of those kind of 3 teams from their division that makes it into the playoffs. But the reason why I think we win this game, we're coming home, obviously, and I think we start to build that kind of home field advantage, especially with all of our fans coming back. However, we played them 2 years ago with Freddie Kitchens as our head coach, and we did not do too well. Now we have a great head coach in Kevin Stefanski, and obviously he game plans a perfect game for us offensively. However, the one thing that I wanted to make sure that we mentioned here is we get our first taste of what we can expect for 2 games later on this season, with Kyler Murray being the running back kind of quarterback archetype of a Lamar Jackson. So it's going to be great prep for us. However, they do have a DeAndre Hopkins, which is, a big standout for us for, Denzel Ward and our cornerbacks and our safeties to look out for. The big thing here is I don't think their defense is as good as what it used to be. Obviously, they lost Patrick Peterson, and now their cornerback / DB room isn't filled with a lot of good coverage cornerbacks. So 3 keys to the game that I have is OBJ and the wide receiver company bust loose against lackluster cornerback room. Linebackers and DNs do their best to contain Kyler, and Stefanski gets in a groove play calling. Obviously, it took us a while last year to get into a groove. We have a couple games this year where, we'll score high amounts of points, but mainly because of just how talented we are. But by this time in the season, if Kevin Stefanski isn't rolling with the play calling, we got to be a little hesitant about what's to come. But I think Stefanski, probably already in somewhat of a groove after winning 5 games, continues to go on and just absolutely call a hell of a game.
We hope that the trend from last year of not losing back-to-back games, of course, continues. And that's kind of what I'm banking on here, especially with having projected to lose against the Chargers. That's funny that I just saw you correct that, but I was so confused that nobody will ever know. Nobody will know. But I think it's funny how we both talk about the defense here, and I think their defense is not as talented as us, but it's almost on a similar trajectory where they have these guys. They have Isaiah Simmons. They draft Zaven Collins in the draft, where they're asking some new guys and some people who they've just recently, added onto their team. Yeah, JJ Watt. I mean, we know that Budda Baker's good. We know that he's a good player, but they're asking all these guys to kind of play in unison when they haven't had a lot of experience together, which that's what the Browns are asking as well. But I think it's interesting how my key player to watch is John Johnson III, JJ3, and we both talked about the defense, and we both have pretty high scoring games. I have as 40-31 Browns, and you have it as 35-28 Browns. But I think that this is where we see the turnover game really happen. I think the offenses are both going to try to throw the ball a decent amount. I think that Baker and Kyler are going to be going pass for pass, kind of how you think the Chargers game will be. But I think that John Johnson, steps up and he even generates a turnover. He has our defenses lined up correctly, in accordance with what Joe Woods wants. And I think that this is a nice, leadership game from JJ3. I think we see how big of a professional he is and how big of an offseason addition he was to the roster. So 4-2 for me and 5-1 for you. We still got one loss on the board for you and 2 for me.
Yeah.
Headed into week 7. Week 7's usually, halfway through the year, not this year, against the Denver Broncos at home. So back-to-back games at home after being on the road for 2 weeks in a row. And we have drastically different thoughts on the score outcome of this game, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I think honestly with the score, we have it in the same kind of idea of what the Broncos are going to do. I have them scoring at least one more touchdown. But with with Teddy Bridgewater getting the nod to be the starting quarterback there, I think it limits, and trust me, I'm a Teddy Bridgewater lover. I wanted him back in the Johnny Manziel draft and everything. We're going to forget about that because we got Baker Mayfield now. But he kind of limits what you can do offensively. And in respects to that, I think the Broncos have a super, super talented offense. Their wide receivers are stacked. Their tight ends are stacked. Melvin Gordon is back there. I think a lot of people kind of doubt what Melvin Gordon can still do. I think he's still a quality running back. And offensively, they are just primed to kind of put up points dependent on how they start games out. Now, the way I say how they start games out is because Teddy Bridgewater is an efficient passer. He's not really a gunslinger, and he can't really throw the ball too deep. So he's not built for comeback. So the 3 keys to this game is a classic Browns 1-2 punch offensive, or with the offense with runs and play actions. You want to force Bridgewater to throw deep. Obviously, I was just talking about his arm strength not being too great. And then you need to have a little bit of a bend, but don't break defense. Get off the field on third downs. Again, this is a super talented offensive team. I mean, they are high-powered in Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant, Melvin Gordon, Teddy Bridgewater. Like I said, I'm a fan. But you got to play tactically against him, and you got to make sure that he doesn't get the chance to, get off to an early lead and play that efficient game of his.
I think we've talked about it a lot that we're just not playing the NFC East this year. And that's probably the biggest difference with the schedule. I think that we're playing more underrated teams. Yep. I think we've improved. We're probably a little bit high, and, being biased, we're a little bit high on the record prediction, but I don't see that as a bad thing. But we do have us both winning this game against the Broncos. It's at home. And this was one of those games where my thoughts on the matchup were a little bit surrounded by some sort of weather prediction, because I know this time last year, so week 7, I mean, you're getting into October. It's already October. It's going to be October, November weather. So it was bad weather last year. So that's why I kind of have the score prediction low, being Browns 17, Broncos 10. And I think that I agree with you, though. I think the running backs do shine here. I have Nick Chubb as the player to watch. And I even said I think Nick Chubb could outscore Denver on his own. Yeah. I think Teddy Bridgewater is underrated too. I don't know if I think their offense it's one of those offenses where if they had even, a top 15 quarterback, they could probably be really good. And I just don't think that they do at this point. Yeah. And they won't have one integrated into the system even by week 7. So I think it's a defensive battle. I think our running backs are clearly just better, though.
Yeah, I honestly thought that Drew Lock was going to get the nod to start, because I think he has a play style that fits more to what they have offensively. But I guess that's also why they kind of sat him, is because he took too many of those risks throwing the ball downfield, and he wasn't, super accurate. So they want to be a little bit more efficient with what they do offensively. But I still just don't think that Teddy's got he had a lot of weapons in Carolina that he didn't take advantage of. And so, I think they'll end up having to sit him at some point, dependent on their season. So
we're 7 weeks in.
Yep.
6-1 for you and 5-2 for me. Moving into week 8, and week 8 is weirdly enough, which I know the NFL does this, but this is the first divisional game, week 8.
Yep.
Which is, I feel like they often backload the schedule at least in recent years, because they do kind of like letting us play Pittsburgh the last week of the year or somebody in the division, which is fine. But week 8 is your first divisional game. We both have this as a win just to start, but I think we could assign this as a disagreement just based on the outcome and score prediction.
I think so. I really do think so.
Which is weird because I'm the optimistic one here.
Yeah, you have it 42 Browns, Steelers 10. I have Browns 27, Steelers 21. Listen, we got to face these guys twice this season. And I do have a similar instance later on with our second matchup with them, mainly because I think at that point in the season, they're going to implode. But at this point in the season, I think they're still a somewhat competent team. So I'm just going to kind of get my point of this out of the way, because I want to hear what you have to say. But the 3 keys of this game: abuse that Steelers new O-line. I mean, we've heard it all off season. The Steelers, after their loss to us in the playoffs, they really took a swing for the worst. I mean, guys just started leaving. Guys were getting upset. This team's kind of in shambles, but not quite yet to the point where I think we're going to blow them out. Number 2, make Roethlisberger turn the ball over. We did it in the playoffs, and I think we can do it again, especially at this point in the season. I think our defense is starting to rock. It's starting to gel. I think it's a very good game for us defensively. And then 3, something that I think is just a key in every game, but it needs to be spoken about a little bit more here: protect Baker and play efficient offense. Obviously, that first game last year against the Steelers, we got abused by their DNs and their linebackers. I think this game, you need to just have Baker sit comfortably in the pocket and just let him play his game and be efficient.
I think here's my reason for 42-10. I think we're at home. It's the perfect storm for me. We're at home. It's going to be jam-packed. It's going to be rocking. Yeah. And you see this in sports, and there's no evidence to back it up, but you see previous matchups, at least in football, kind of trickle over even to the next season. I think that playoff game trickles over. Now you're at first energy. You're 8 weeks into the season. You've played 7 games with this new defense. This is when the defense is going to start gelling. I think you're going to see some wonky first quarter stuff. You might see snaps over the head. Who knows? I think it's going to be a weird first half like the playoff game was. But I just don't think they're ever going to be able to get the ball rolling. They potentially could start the year with 2 rookie offensive linemen, and they still could be the case at week 8 or worse. I don't think their offensive line is getting any better. Maybe if they gel, maybe if they play together, it'll get better. I think that Najee Harris doesn't do a whole lot in this game, and I think our defense, this is the best defensive showing of the year so far at week 8. I think we're more motivated, and I think that Myles Garrett is someone who generates at least 1 turnover here. I think he's just lighting up the stat sheet. And I think they're going to be so worried about both ends coming off, whether it be Clowney, whether it be Garrett. One of them is going to have a huge game. I think Joe Woods finally gets to play this offense and actually utilize all the tools that we have. And we actually have a bunch of tools to send them, schemes that they're not ready for. I think that we're better coached in this game, believe it or not. I don't know if Kevin Stefanski's, better coach than Mike Tomlin, but I think that we out-coach them this game. And I just think that playoff win from last year trickles over. And this is just a rout for the first time, maybe ever since we've been alive, where we totally destroy them.
Yeah. And that would be such a pleasant surprise, especially at home, since we haven't really had a super convincing win over them. Obviously last year to get into the playoffs, we played their 2s and kind of just snuck out a victory, but still nonetheless, I think that's a great win from your standpoint. And I hope that's what happens. But yeah, moving into week 9, another kind of differing of opinions. We both have this game being a win. Obviously coming into it, I have it as we're 7-1 and you have it as 6-2, but we both have wins over the Cincinnati Bengals at Cincinnati. Now, for me, you talked about it earlier and I talked about it, I think, a little bit. The Bengals just made all the wrong moves this offseason. I think that they took a step back. They let certain guys go and they kind of just settled for picking up new replacements. And so that's me talking about free agency. I think they reached a ton in this draft. Obviously, they'll forever talk about the Jamar Chase pick, and depending on how he does this season over Penei Sewell, I think they just reached, and I think they missed on a lot of things. And I think that this game, for me, I have it chalked up as 34 Browns, Bengals 17. Keys to the game. Browns pressure Burrow into oblivion. Obviously, Baker Mayfield's not playing defense. Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney just tee off on Burrow, and they really make the Bengals organization rethink what they should be doing in terms of their franchise quarterback and protecting him. Baker continues to abuse his abuse from last season on the Bengals DBs. Baker's kind of had the number, or the Bengals DBs number out for a long time now. So I think he continues that. And the Baker OBJ connection sees a strong outing together. Obviously, we saw in the first game last year against them that Baker and OBJ had a really nice connection in the end zone. And I think that, coming out of that injury in Cincinnati, OBJ comes back and has a little bit of a revenge tour. So that's my outing there. But Jeff, you got this as a 28 Browns, 24 Bengals win.
This is, weirdly enough, one of the more difficult games for me to predict on the schedule, just because of how big of a win I have us week 8 at home. I think you see a little bit of a Browns hangover game. You're on the road in Cincinnati. I think you struggled there last season. I do not think that the Bengals got substantially better than they were last year. I think that, they're pretty much on par, maybe a little bit better. They have a couple more offensive weapons, I guess you could say, with Jamar Chase, if he could catch the football. But I think that maybe we underestimate the Bengals. Maybe, they're not at a great record standpoint here. And this could be a little bit of a trap game, believe it or not. My first run through of my predictions, I had this as a loss, but we ended up having 5 losses at the end, which we were talking about before we started recording this. And I just didn't think I thought we were going to have less losses than that. So I had to take a loss away somewhere. And I think just the expertise, just the experience, and just the coaching edge, which I keep talking about, but the coaching edge is huge here, because I don't think the Bengals have found their guy yet, but we have with Kevin Stefanski. So I think that all of those things culminating together, we edge out the win. I think you see Donovan Peoples-Jones, who played great there last year in Cincinnati. I think he continues that. I think that he has one of his best stat lines against the lackluster defensive backs of the Bengals. But through week 9, you have the Browns at 8-1, and I have the Browns at 7-2.
Yeah, we want to talk about that a little bit. I mean,
yeah, sure.
It's just, for me, going through this, I tweeted out, I think I got to this point in these predictions where I was like, this is just, I don't think I've ever had the Browns have this many wins without as many losses. And I'm just like, I don't know. I can look through the rest of the schedule and tell you who we're going to lose to, but man, do I feel like I'm way too overly optimistic, and I just don't know that I care. I don't know that I care anymore, because you have a top 3 roster and you have a coach that won head coach of the year last year. I mean, like, for a lot of things to happen for us to lose, I think it would just be overwhelming to have any of these games kind of be flipped in that direction.
And really, until this point, I mean, the Chiefs are clearly one of the best rosters in football, but we haven't played anyone outside of the Chiefs by week 9 or week 10, even, that stands out as someone who's going to be a top 3, top 5 roster in the league. Exactly. People make the argument for Los Angeles, but I don't know yet. I don't think they're there quite yet. Who knows what the season will bring us? But what I think is interesting about after week 9, I have us with 7 wins. You have us with 8. Usually after week 9, we're trying to get healthy through the bye or whatever. Most NFL teams still have 3 games before the bye after week 9, which is crazy. A lot of teams are in that situation. I think a lot of teams are complaining about how deep their bye weeks are this year. Some teams have like week 14 byes, which is crazy with the 17 game set. But back to back on the road again, week 10, back on the road at Foxborough at the New England Patriots. This is a tough game too. They give Mac Jones the nod, they get rid of Cam Newton. So that's different than just naming Mac Jones the starter. That's totally different. That's basically, we're rocking with the rookie or somebody else. I don't even know who is on their depth chart.
Stidham or something.
Stidham, but I don't even think he's healthy. He should be healthy week 10, hopefully. Spoiler alert, we both have this as a win. This is another tough game, though, I think. I don't think we're going to roll them up regardless of the quarterback.
Yeah, I think it's tough to try and rule Bill Belichick, honestly. But I think this game could have been a lot closer if you kept Cam Newton. In my honest opinion, I think Mac Jones has looked good in the preseason, but I just don't know that he's got the stuff that kind of could lead a team as a rookie this early on to either upset or make a closer game out of this for myself. I mean, I don't know. I think Cam Newton still has it in him, but obviously the outside of football aspect has affected him a little bit and has led to his departure there. So it is what it is. My three keys to this game: I have the Browns winning 31-24. But my keys to the game is welcome the rookie to the NFL with some D-line stunts. Obviously, you have a couple of defensive players on your side of the ball as key players to watch. My second key is limit the safety valve of tight ends and running back dump offs for Mac Jones. Obviously, rookies really like to kind of get into a nice rhythm with their tight ends often, just because they'll feel the pressure from NFL defenses and it'll get to them a little bit. So, you want to have your linebackers kind of cover those tight ends tightly, those running backs tightly, make sure that there's nothing easy for Mac Jones in this game. And then finally, just a continuation of the offensive fluidity for the Browns. Obviously, we talked about Kevin Stefanski getting the groove. I just think that needs to continue. And I think, at this point in week 10, it's just a typical Browns offensive game. And that's what it is.
So going through the research, and if you follow the modern day analytics of football, then I'm sure you're aware of what's called Pro Football Focus, also known as PFF. Pretty polarizing, website group of guys who put together comprised scores for players around the league, literally every single player. I used all of their player ratings to rate the teams on our schedule. What was most shocking to me with the New England Patriots is that aggregately, the average offensive line grade for every team we play this year, the New England Patriots have the best grade. Better than the Chiefs with the revamped offense and that. I don't think we play. This is what I'm saying. I don't think we play a lot of good offensive lines the whole year, which is cool because I think that our defensive line, the interior could be a question mark. And that's why I have the key players to watch as both Malik Dowell and Malik Jackson. Hopefully Malik Dowell is playing a nice sleeper, significant role on this defensive line by this point in the year. And I think that we're just going to need to outplay their offensive line. I think that if our defensive line can get pushed, hopefully Mac Jones is a little bit, nervous. He's a little bit worried back there and he makes some mistakes. And that's pretty much your difference in the game. I have us only winning by a field goal, which is a little bit weird, not knowing who our kicker is going to be, having any game predicted as us just winning by a field goal. But I'm going to stick to my guns. I think that we squeak it out here. I think it's probably not as close as 24-21. I think you might see a tired 2020 Browns defense where we're up like 24-10 going into the fourth, and then we somehow give up points where we shouldn't have.
Right.
But I think it's like not as close as a 3-point game, but that's just how it turns out. I think Billy B keeps it close. Yeah, but absolutely. I think we're searching for the bye week at this point. I think we probably have injuries and we have to play the Detroit Lions, which is nice, at home. Yeah. And this is a big game for us. Don't you think?
Yeah, huge. Absolutely huge. No, this is as close as you're going to get to a bye week.
Big scoring game.
Yeah. I don't think this game is anything special. We talked about the Houston Texans game being, is this the worst team we play? The Detroit Lions, not a very good team. Very, very bad team. Obviously trading away Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff, a significant downgrade at quarterback. And then I just think that there's no talent that I can think of on this team. Like Hawkinson at tight end maybe is their next best player, Okuda on defense. But those are three guys that none of them are Pro Bowlers in their own sense yet. So it is what it is. I think this is a blowout, 41-17 win for the Browns. Three keys to this game. The defense has its most takeaways this season. The offense gives its lesser-known talent time to shine. Anthony Schwartz, Dimitri Felton, and Stefanski continues to run a tight ship with little to no errors. Obviously, this is a game that we could slack off a bit just because of who the team is. I mean, at this point, the Lions could be 0-11 or 0-10, whatever it may be, 0-9. But this is just a blowout for me. I don't know what else to. I see your key player to watch, and I think that kind of tells the story of what we think about the Detroit Lions. So
I literally didn't even know what to write for this game because that's the big difference between week 11 and week 2 against Houston. Because Houston, like when you're 0-1, it's like, okay, like you're not tanking at 0-1. Maybe the Houston Texans might be, but
right
in week 11, Detroit could be in tank mode. They could be going for that top half tier first round draft pick again, which is, we've been there. So you can't blame them at week 11. I do have the whole team as the key player to watch just because I hope this is one of our better all-around games.
Yeah.
I hope this is one of our better defense performances, and I'm hoping that the starters on offense are not playing in the second half. Hopefully you could get some rest. It would be really nice to get a big first half lead. Like you said, don't mess around, don't slack, and you could get some of our offensive starters who have not had the bye, Jarvis, OBJ, Baker, Chubb, Hunt. You could get those guys, even our offensive line, some second half rest leading into week 12 at Baltimore, which is it's going to be a quick turnaround from playing the Lions to playing Baltimore the next week on the road. And I think this is where we can agree that the scheduling gets a little wonky from the NFL.
Yep, 1,000%. And obviously we'll get right into it. I have the Ravens pulling out a 28-24 win against our Brownies, making us 10-2. I finally have us coming back down to earth in a little bit of a sobering kind of defeat. Obviously, we go to Baltimore. This is a primetime game. And, we've always struggled against Lamar. We've been struggling since he's entered the NFL. And Joe Woods has to kind of put his new defense to the ultimate test, I think, this point in the season, where we've played enough games that, we should be settled in. But unfortunately, Lamar Jackson is a different beast. Harbaugh is an excellent coach and knows how to scheme up some great plays. And so I have this as a loss. The three keys to the game for the Browns to, win, to make this close. I have the Browns defense will need to keep Lamar in the pocket. Obviously, something we haven't been great at, or any team has really been great at doing until the playoffs for their sake. But the second key is getting out to an early lead to force Lamar to throw, obviously going hand in hand with making him stay in the pocket. And then the defense, the third key is the defense will need to stuff run lanes efficiently, just because they lost J.K. Dobbins, but they have Gus Edwards, who is a super efficient runner. And you mix that with Lamar Jackson, you kind of need to have the run lane stuffed in a way that they can't really get that going for themselves.
So we're at the point in the year where preseason, before any games have played, we're basically throwing darts at this point. You don't really know what's going to happen this deep into the season. We're going to come back and look at this video and make amendments, make changes, and we're going to talk about analysis of each upcoming game. This isn't going to be our end all be all, of course, it's just a fun record prediction. And this is where I think last year, everybody saw the NFL game of the year last year, so high scoring, where there was no defense. Obviously, the Browns defense was not playing good football at that point of the year, but I think that this is kind of a 180. This is a turnaround. This game is low scoring. I have us losing as well, 21-17. I think that this is the first point in the season, hopefully, where it's kind of like, okay, our offense pretty much got shut down. It might be a frustrating offensive game. I think that the Ravens have played exceptionally well against us. I think that Lamar plays some of his best football against the Browns, regardless of the personnel. This is a game where I'm watching JOK 100%. The whole game, I'm watching him on defense. Hopefully he's balling out. Hopefully he, like you said, stuffs those run lanes, whoever it's going to be, if it's going to be Lamar, if it's going to be Gus Edwards, regardless of who's running the football. But I find it interesting that we both have this game as a loss. I think that being on the road definitely justifies that a little bit more. And a loss into the bye week, that's not the end of the world, I don't think. I think that that's pretty much the case. I feel like we felt that way last year as well. Now we hit the bye, week 13 bye, and then right back around. And I don't know, I should have looked, but I don't know who Baltimore is playing week 13.
I don't either, but it
would have been nice to know.
Yes and no, obviously, for the sake of just like, are they coming off a tough game? Are they coming off an easy game? But it's still just the scheduling just doesn't make sense. I don't know that
Bad.
I've ever seen us have to play a division rival,
They're playing the
it's back to
Steelers
back. So they're playing back to back to back division games, and we're
3 in a
playing
row.
just back to back games against them, which is just
Mm-hmm.
absurd. This is coming off the bye week for us, which is a great thing. Kevin Stefanski gets 2 whole weeks to prepare for this Baltimore team, and also just correct the mistakes from the last game that we had played against them. And I just think that this is a turnaround, a great turnaround. You have it a lot closer than I do. I have us winning more than the Ravens did in our last game. But for me, this is just super weird. I wish I knew like what the thought process was. I kind of wish this was the primetime game, but it's not. We had the primetime game here last time against them, so
Right.
obviously they get it. But the three keys to the game that I have for this is Browns offense gets back on track and unleashes plays they might not have shown in their last matchup. Obviously, you hate to like make this a point in general, but Kevin Stefanski could be playing chess. He could know that, going into that week before the bye, that we're limping into it and we might not have all the players that we might need in order to pull off a win against Baltimore, but he might get some of those players back and, kind of calls a little bit of a different game this time around. The second key is the Browns do keep Lamar Jackson keep Lamar in check and allow him to run east and west. Obviously, when a quarterback is just as mobile as Lamar, if you pressure him up front and you get him out of the pocket and go east and west, as long as you stop him for 1 to 2 yards, he can't make that much of an impact with his legs. And the final thing is create takeaways in the pass defense. I feel like Lamar has done a very good job his whole career not throwing a ton of interceptions, and especially not throwing a ton of interceptions against us. We need to change that in this game and kind of get off on what needs to be something similar to the Steelers, where we kind of turn it around against this organization and get it going in our favor from now on.
I see the trend continuing here with us just playing instant classics against Baltimore.
Yeah.
I think that we're lucky and we're unlucky to have such good teams in our division, but I almost see us as having two rivals where I see the Ravens being just as big as a rival as the Steelers. I know that the Steelers is the clear cut team that we would love to destroy, but I know a lot of the vintage Browns fans hate Baltimore. So it's pretty cool that we have two teams that we could, equally root against for the most part. But I think that this is a game winning. I think this is hopefully your Baker Mayfield vintage moment of game winning drive. Maybe we're losing 27-21. We, 2-minute drill in the fourth quarter, go down, score a touchdown, kick the extra point and win. But I don't understand the scheduling here because I think that this is the biggest game of the year. Yep. It really could be as far as divisional standings. If the Ravens are coming off, they beat us in week 12 and then they beat the Steelers, they probably have a good chance at that point in the season to be leading the AFC North. And this game is going to mean the whole difference with who's going to win the division. I think if we don't win the division this year, some weird way, it's a disappointment for a team that hasn't won the division and, who knows how long, but I think that we should be the favorites to win the division this year from the preseason, from the get-go. I have JOK again, stepping up huge. I just hope that he does something crazy against Lamar. I hope he just destroys him in the open field, honestly. I don't think Lamar is that dumb, but we'll see when we get there. So we're coming off back-to-back Ravens games with the bye in between. Yeah. After week 14, I have us as 10-3, and you have us as 11-2, staying at home against the Las Vegas Raiders. Do the Raiders? I see your score prediction being close. I'm actually kind of shocked by that.
Yeah, I think the Raiders, they're such a weird team, and since Baker has been our quarterback, the Raiders have kind of had our number. We're 0-2 against them. And I think that there's just like some teams, it's weird. They just have a kind of different vibe against certain other teams. And it's not like there's a reason for the Raiders to have a different approach to us, but I think it's just how it has played out since Baker has been our quarterback that we're 0-2 against them. However, I do have us flipping the script on this one with a 34-28 win for the Browns. I think this Raiders team kind of got a little bit worse. They beat us last year, and I think that's why I have a little bit more respect for them than I think most other people don't. So for me, the three keys to this game is obviously limit Darren Waller's activity. Darren Waller's been a huge name in the tight end game. So we got to limit that. Our linebackers, probably one of our weaker points of talking points that we've had, but we need to see them have a nice game against Darren Waller. Kind of similar to last year too. We need to have Chubb and Hunt run wild. I don't think Nick Chubb was available for that game, and a big reason for why we might have lost that game. And then I kind of do throw it back to last year when the Browns wide receivers kind of dropped the ball on a lot of Baker's throws. And I say that they flipped the script from a year ago, and Baker has high completion percentage.
So this is week 15. I have the Browns actually winning by a bigger margin than you, 40-21. And I think this is where you see Jarvis Landry have maybe his best game of the year. I think this is where last year we saw him start to really pick it up. Even with being injured last year, I think he started playing his best football down the stretch and continued that into the playoffs, which was huge. I totally agree with you. I think that this Raiders defense is so much worse than the Ravens defenses that we're going to see in back-to-back weeks in between the bye, that we're going to just take huge advantage of that. I think our confidence is going to be, hopefully at its peak coming off of a win against Baltimore. That's huge for the division. And this is another AFC game where I didn't talk about it a lot, and I should have, where the AFC games are almost just as important as the division games, especially with this increased playoff format. I think last year where the records were all pretty much the same at the end of the year between the Ravens, us, and the Steelers, it came down to beating Tennessee last year. It came down to, we lost to Oakland, or we lost to Las Vegas last year. So this is a huge game at the end of the year, regardless of where the Raiders stand. They could be in this weird last playoff spot push where they need to beat us, or they could maybe, knock us out of the division race. I think that there's no reason to think that the Raiders are going to be mailing it in by this point. So this is another underrated game on this schedule, almost like the Chargers earlier in the season, where it's nice to pick up these AFC wins.
Yeah, absolutely. And I for some reason I wanted to talk about it, but I feel like the point needs to be made that Kevin Stefanski is a better coach than John Gruden. And I feel like it's going to show in this game. Hopefully in the case of what you have the score prediction being more so than mine.
Now, segue into week 16. Is Kevin Stefanski a better coach than Matt LaFleur?
I think that doesn't matter, because I think the guys that you got playing at quarterback matter a lot more in this game, especially since it's December, it's Christmas Day, it's at Lambeau Field, and Aaron Rodgers is going to be the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers.
I think it's interesting because we literally only in 17 games, they added us a game, and our schedule's harder this year. We disagreed more last year on our record 1,000%. Prediction than we did. We only have one disagreement this year, and it's the Charger game. Everywhere else, we have the same wins. We have the same losses. We have a very similar game here. Both of us say we're going to lose to the Packers at Lambeau. Road games are just so hard. That I don't care who you're playing, really. I think the game at Cincinnati is going to be hard fought. I think that regardless of rosters in the AFC North, that's just AFC North football. Even when our Browns were so bad, I felt that we tended to play teams close in the AFC. That's just divisional football. That's why it's so fun. But I agree with you. I think Aaron Rodgers, weirdly enough, is trying so hard this year just because he wants to move and he wants to play with somebody else. I don't think he's done this year. And that's why I have Denzel Ward as the key player to watch here, because Devontae Adams is coming off one of the best seasons that a wide receiver could have, ever. So I think that this is a matchup I'm looking forward to all year long. Denzel Ward, mano a mano with Devontae Adams.
Yeah, I have that being a point of emphasis too, but I think, God, I want to go to this game so badly because one, I want to go to Lambeau Field. Two, I want to see Aaron Rodgers play, and I think if I watch Aaron Rodgers play in any other jersey than a Green Bay one, it's going to feel wrong. Yep. But why did they have to make this on Christmas Day? Like, I want to go to this game, but I'm expecting it to be like a snowstorm during this game. And I feel like, even though I have the one key of the game being the Browns defense will need to limit Rodgers and Adams combo. My other keys are more about Chubb and Hunt needing to eclipse 200 plus rushing yards, because I think, throwing the ball in snow and expecting your wide receivers to catch the ball and run perfect routes and such is going to be such a non-ethical thing to have. And then the final key I have is just Browns receivers need to secure passes and hold on to the ball in bad weather. Just at this point, like, just secure the pass, like just have like 9-yard comebacks and just like go down as soon as you catch the ball. Cause there's really no point in trying to do anything fancy as a wide receiver in the snow.
True. I've kind of even forgot, like running through these predictions. I kind of forgot this game was on Christmas Day. It will most definitely be snowing in Lambeau.
It's so unfortunate.
It's going to be fun though. It's going to
be awesome to watch.
We have interesting games on the schedule, and every game down the stretch is meaningful. And I think our season is backloaded to be more difficult on the back end. That's why I kind of like getting Arrowhead and Kansas City out of the way first. But we've been at it for a while. Still 2 games left, and they're both divisional games. Now, I think if you asked a good majority of Browns fans, even with how much hype we've received this offseason and how good we are projected to be, I think that if you ask most people, they would say, we're going to sweep the Bengals, and it's more likely than not we're going to split with Baltimore and maybe even Pittsburgh. I think Baltimore is for sure split, and I think a lot of people have that projected. I think it's interesting. Me and you both agree that we're going to sweep the Steelers this year. When's the last time that has happened? Do you know off the top of your head? I don't.
Probably since the Browns turned into the Ravens.
Right.
So I, this is interesting for me because I have the Steelers imploding by this time in the season. My thoughts on this matchup is that Ben Roethlisberger is no longer the starting quarterback. I think either one, he's hurt again, or two, he is just playing awful football like he did for the last 6 weeks of last season and going into the playoffs and all that. And Tomlin's struggling with either Haskins or Mason Rudolph as the quarterback one. I think offensively, the Steelers are just clueless. And with that being said, the Browns take advantage with their offense, even though the Steelers do have a quality defense, I think, even though they've lost some pieces. I think the Browns win 30-14. And my keys to this game is that the Browns defense limits the Steelers to less than 300 total yards. Again, that just goes with my storyline of like Haskins, Rudolph. One of those two dudes is starting at quarterback, and Steelers fans are, preparing for the worst. The second key is the defense continues to force turnovers, something that, I think you talked a lot about in that first matchup this season with them. It's just carrying over what happened in the playoffs and continuing to force turnovers. And then finally, I have the Browns offense converts on those turnovers to points. Obviously, a big point of emphasis when you get turnovers is turning it into points.
Yeah, I think you have a fair, valid projection of that could be a reality. I mean, Big Ben getting to the tail end of his career, I don't think that you could rule him not playing this deep into the season out, especially with a whole extra game. And I don't think their schedule is very friendly toward to them either. I think they have a lot of games that are on short rest, etc. But I think that this is a role reversal game for the Browns where, all things considered, let's just say Pittsburgh's playing competitive football. I think the Steelers need this game more than we do at this point in the season. Let's hope that that's the case. I think they're going to be, on the edge for one of those wild card spots deeper in the rankings. But I still think we get the job done here. I think it's a tough game. I think winning at Heinz Field is one of the more difficult places to win football. Lambeau, Arrowhead. We got some tough road games this year compared to last year, which is going to be fun. It's going to test our character. But I think that their defense is probably going to be in try hard peak performance mode by this time of the year. So I'm watching the offensive line to have its best, pass protection, run blocking game combination of the year. I think if our offensive line plays to the potential that we know it can, I think that we squeak this one out. With my predictions taking us to 12 wins, your predictions taking us to 13, headed into the last game of the season, ending it on a home game.
Yep.
against the Cincinnati Bengals, and you have us going to 14-3.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that we have very similar thoughts here on this matchup. This is a game where we could potentially see none of our starters play. We could see Case Keenum start and see a lot of our backups just get a ton of time here because of what our season records are at this point. But I still think that, with that being said, we've seen teams do similar things to the Browns as like playing against the Browns in their final game of the season going into the playoffs, where they just rest their players and still find a way to beat us. And so I have that being the case with us. With the Bengals, I think that, even though we are putting in our secondary team, Kevin Stefanski still runs a tight enough ship that he game plans well enough for those twos to win. And the three keys to the game that I have at this point are: the team as a whole plays conservative but smart. The defense allows Burrow to throw short, and getting off the field, or the defense gets off the field on 3rd and 4th downs, allowing the offense to run clock. You're a key player to watch. Another quality one. I think it's very funny. So
just out of players to pick from at this point. And like you said, let's hope that we hopefully have the division locked up. Yeah. That would be pretty cool. I think 13-14 wins hopefully gets you there. Yeah. Hopefully that, Baltimore, Pittsburgh aren't playing anyone to maybe rival us. That's why the other games are so important, winning games in the AFC, having the tiebreaker, head-to-head, whatever it may be. I don't see the Bengals being in a playoff push here. So I don't see them trying very hard either. Even at this point in the season, I don't think their record's going to be good enough. So I totally agree. I think
might be looking at another top 10 pick by their standards.
They could be. So I don't know if they're going to be, they might not even be playing Burrow at this point, which is, weird enough to think about. But I think our backups could probably beat them anyway, which I think we've seen in the in the preseason, that we could play backups and with our coaching on both sides of the football, still be competitive. So as a final tally for the first ever 17-game season, me with a 13-4 record predictions for our Brownies, and Justin 14-3, 1 game difference. The Chargers game decides it all for us, which is crazy how long we just talked about this. And it's really only a 1 game difference. We could give you a 2-minute synopsis, but this is going to be something that we're going to keep this, and we're going to copy this, and we're going to make a whole new doc, and we're going to move through week by week and change our predictions for more accurate, more on point, more storyline oriented talking points throughout the year. And we know this is a long one, probably break it up into 2 parts. So if you watched all the way through, we appreciate you, and we appreciate everybody new to the channel. Justin, anything else before we sign off?
Yeah, just to go back to what you were saying, just to be really quick about it, we will still do our weekly previews of the games that are coming. Obviously, we want to be able to get injury updates for both teams and just kind of storylines if there are any. And yeah, so that will be it. And yeah, that was a great session. I think a long one for sure, but we'll do about this video as we always do. So good stuff.
Yep. Everybody, thank you for watching. We're glad that you're here. We're glad that you're Browns fans. We're glad that you're fans of the NFL. And we really would appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and stuck on board with us for the Cleveland Browns season in entirety. Hopefully it's going to be a historic one in the best way possible. And we appreciate you for being along on the ride with us. And with that being said, we will catch you in our next video. Peace.
Peace.